Consult an advisor or conduct your own due diligence when making financial decisions. General principles discussed during this program do not constitute personal advice. This program is furnished by Dentist Advisors, a registered investment advisor. This is Dentist Money. Now, here's your host, Reese Harper.
Welcome to the Dentist Money blog on DentalEconomics.com, where we help dentists make smart financial decisions. I'm your host, Reese Harper, here with my trusty old co-host, Sir Ryan Isaac.
Hey, Reese. How you doing?
Good. I'm kind of wishing I had a title like Sir.
We'll give you one.
But we're just going to go with regular old Reese Harper.
You have host.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you are correct. We're on a mission, okay? We help dentists make smart financial decisions, but we're also on a mission to help dentists make wise financial decisions. There's a difference, wise and smart. So that's what today's show is all about.
Yeah, I think we all know there's a difference between being smart and being wise, and it's probably a conversation most of us have had at one point or another. So I'm interested in how you're going to explain this to us today, sir.
Well, I'm gonna explain it, and it's gonna get pretty serious here. I'm going to reference the most reliable and credible source I could find on the internet. Because anytime, as you know, as everyone knows, when you go looking for an authoritative voice on matters of philosophy, there's only one place to go. Any guesses?
We all know where this is.
You know where this is leading? The Dungeons and Dragons message board.
Of course. D&D. The old D&D. The source of all truth.
All truth. And if you're lucky enough, you'll find a discussion that answers your exact question, like it did mine. In this case, Lord of Dragons 24, who you know well.
Yeah, he's a dear friend.
He started by asking about the difference between intelligence and wisdom, to which user Spadoinkle, okay, he replied, and this is great. Intelligence tells you that tomatoes are a fruit, but wisdom tells you that they wouldn't be very good in a fruit salad.
Well done, Spadoinkle. I need to clarify that I don't know Lord of Dragons 24. I don't know Spadoinkle, and this is not my favorite message board. Ryan was using sarcasm in that.
Heavy sarcasm, but I like the fruit salad.
But that's very poetic.
Yeah.
And I do like these guys.
Okay.
What else did you find in this D&D message board?
Well, since you're asking, Reese, there was a guy named, or gal, I don't know, named Hamlet, user Hamlet, that said to crib notes from Jurassic Park, intelligence is figuring out if you could do it. Wisdom is figuring out if you should do it. And as we know from Jurassic Park, they shouldn't have done it.
Yeah, that's a good one, too. I think I could go along with that.
Okay. So what do you think? Is that a good starting point? D&D?
It's an excellent starting point. I always appreciate it when you really dive in and do your research.
Yeah, okay.
Come prepared for the show.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. So how about you, Reese? How would you explain the difference then between being smart and being wise?
Well, there's probably a few ways to frame it up, and I don't disagree with our friends in the D&D forum. But I would say that someone who's smart probably has the ability to figure things out, and then someone who's wise has the ability to make good decisions.
It's a good transition because we know that dentists are obviously smart people, and all you dentists and specialists out there, you went through a lot to get to where you're at right now.
This is the part of the show where Ryan panders to all the dentists out there.
It's free advertising.
Yeah.
No, it's true, though. I mean, clearly it takes a smart person to get through all those science classes and score well on all the testing and then go through dental school and in some cases specialty school as well, extra years. And Reese, I'm going to turn it over to you now, though. But tell us what this has to do with today's topic, which is about building an advisory board for a dentist.
Yeah, I had a good reminder of this, kind of spurred the podcast topic a bit ago when I was on a flight with a friend of mine. And he's a really down-to-earth entrepreneur. He's got a really impressive track record. And he was telling me about his most recent startup and about all the work he had to do to put together a board of informal and formal board of directors. And he went on to talk a lot about the people on his advisory board and the central role that each one was playing to help his company succeed. And it was really eye-opening for me because he's one of the smartest guys I know, and he's proven multiple times that he can build successful companies. He's got an MBA from Wharton, and he's got a master's degree in international studies from the Lauder Institute and a ton of business experience. But one of the first things he thinks about when he starts building his new venture is how he builds an advisory board to fill in the gaps in his knowledge and skill set where he doesn't have all the strengths. And it kind of made me think, why don't dentists do this more often? When every business in the world is putting together an advisory board, even the smartest people I know are putting together advisory boards. Sometimes dentists try to go at it on their own, and they don't really have a board to reference. So
yeah, that's really interesting. So obviously that's what we're going to talk about today, is how a board of directors or advisors can actually help a dentist out, and what it would actually look like for a dentist to build one.
Yeah, and the point I'm making is that involving other people in your business is a really good thing if you do it the right way. It doesn't mean you're not capable of making all the decisions on your own. It's just that no matter who you are, an MBA or a dentist, it's always helpful to bounce ideas off other people who have a lot of experience in a given area, and it helps hold you accountable and shape a lot of the choices that you wouldn't make otherwise.
Yeah, and that it doesn't mean that they do it for you. You still have the ultimate responsibility to sign or pass off on something, the final decision on something.
Yeah, not at all. And it's a good point to make that when we talk about building a board of directors, that's not the same thing as outsourcing all of your decisions. At the end of the day, the buck has to stop with you, but you're sort of putting yourself in a position to be the gatekeeper of all the good advice that you'll be receiving. And I think too often dentists don't set themselves up with a good advisory board, and they don't have the right people on that advisory board, so that they end up making decisions without as much information. So rather than being the gatekeeper of good advice, they're just the person that has all the ideas.
Yeah, and so with this board, essentially, you're just compiling a group of really smart people with experience in various backgrounds who can give you their professional opinions, and then you're the one who actually makes the decision on what gets implemented. So from our perspective, that's a good example of being wise.
Yeah, and we've seen dentists do a good job of surrounding themselves with the right people, and we've seen other dentists try to go at it alone. And you can make it work on your own, but from what we've seen, the road's a lot more difficult, and it's a lot harder to reach your retirement goals that way. And you've got to remember that compared to most people out there, you're managing more income, more debt, and you're being a practitioner and running a business all at once. And I feel like the ability to construct a good board of directors really separates good businesses from average ones.
Okay, so let's start by describing what an advisory board for a dentist might look like. Where do you want to start?
Well, it could be, we won't talk about the mechanics of, how you should pay people or whether they should have ownership, there's a lot of different ways that you can incentivize people. And for today, let's just say that in most entrepreneurs' cases, there's a lot of people willing to serve as like an informal sounding board for you. But if you want to get results in entrepreneurship, they usually say cash or equity. So you have to give somebody a small piece of what you're building or pay them for their time. And that could be, just depending on the level of involvement that they have. So we won't get kind of too deep today into how to compensate your board or whether it should be an informal or formal board, but that's something that you should definitely get some more advice on depending on how big your practice is or what kind of direction you want to go. But I think today what we want to do is try to go through a list of people that you should look at bringing on, and regardless of who you choose, the first person you bring on is really important, because this is someone who's going to help you decide on other board members, and so you want to get the first person or the first few people right. You generally want the original member of your board to be someone who's got a lot of visibility into your practice and personal financial affairs, someone you can trust at a high level. And that's probably just a good starting point.
Okay, and the other thing we'll talk about when we discuss this is that you don't just go put all your buddies, all your best friends on the board, right? Why not?
Yeah, you want to keep it really professional.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, you and me, we're on each other's board, and we're friends and we're professional.
Yes.
Okay, but if you want people who will give you pushback, it's also good to have a group of people with very diverse backgrounds, so you can get a variety of perspectives. And remember, you're looking for the best outcome. So don't create just a group of yes people that make you feel good. You want people that share different opinions. And make sure that all your board members have experience working with dentists. There's nuances about the industry that people will never understand unless they've really been immersed in it. So
okay, let's start constructing this hypothetical dentist board of directors.
Okay.
Since this is our show entitled The Dentist Money Show.
Yeah.
It's ours.
Yes.
We're going to start with putting a financial advisor on the board of directors for a dentist. We'll go first.
Yeah, good choice. Let's see if your personal financial advisor is really someone who can act as a quarterback on your advisory board, and they're really in a great position to coordinate decisions and activities with other board members because they have a pretty broad base of knowledge if they're competent. They've got a broad base of knowledge in, the certified financial planner exam tests you in tax and legal and insurance and investments and business financials and accounting. And so you might not be as experienced in each area, but you're in a really good position to quarterback a lot of things and make sure that at the end of the day that your personal wealth is actually growing. And sometimes you can get so focused on building your practice, you can kind of neglect your personal financial goals. And what's best for your practice might not always be best for you and your family. So that the personal financial advisor can help you stay balanced, kind of direct traffic between other advisory board members, and help you keep from getting distracted.
Okay, great. So let's move to the second one. Another important member of the board would be your accounting or tax professional.
Yeah, it's your CPA is really important, and in a lot of cases, this person can also function as kind of a quarterback between other advisors. Sometimes their knowledge isn't as deep in every area, and most CPAs have a experience primarily in tax compliance and minimizing your tax liability. And that's kind of their primary role. And the deeper they dive in that area, in my experience, the more they can help you, because it really isn't easy to make sure that clients have maximized all their possible tax deductions. If you just maximize all the legal things that you can do from a tax perspective to minimize your taxes, you're going to be in a better position than the average person, because most people don't actually go through the process of following through and capturing all the possible legal tax deductions they can obtain. And so the deeper your CPA focuses on that area, I really feel like it can really help. They also can be really integral in keeping your business financials organized, making sure that you know how much you're making, where your overhead's going, and they can help you keep your chart of accounts really clean. And in my experience, it's good when they have access to your practice books and are doing your tax returns, so that they can really have good insight into your entire operation. They can give you a lot of good advice, and they play a really crucial role for us as a financial advisor or the financial planner to be able to maximize your the opportunities you have for tax deductions each year as well.
Yeah, that's really good advice, actually. So a third one we'll mention, it feels like to me, it seems like it gets overlooked quite a bit as like a second thought a lot of times at the bottom of a P&L, but a dentist should have a good marketing strategist on the board and someone around to give really good, clear strategy and direction with marketing.
Yeah, man, that's a really good point. I think we encounter a lot of dentists who neglect marketing, right, and their collections stay flat or even decline over a long period of time because they're not investing in activities to grow the business. And a good marketing strategist can help you measure the effectiveness of your marketing initiatives, so you can know if your marketing dollars are moving the needle for you. This person can help you with branding, lead gen, reputation management. I think the thing that's often overlooked is there's a huge difference between implementing marketing, like doing marketing, and then deciding whether that marketing strategy is the best thing for you. I don't know if you've had how you feel about that.
Well, I mean, not only seeing it in a lot of dental practices, but seeing it in our own business and the decisions we've had to make. It's like you said, there's no shortage of things you could go implement, but deciding which ones are actually most effective. I mean, I think it's easy as a business owner to fall into the trap of just doing what everyone else does for marketing. It happens in our industry, it happens in the dental industry, whatever that might be, kind of just go, that's what everyone does for marketing, so I'm just going to throw a little money at it and just kind of do that. But and there's a lot of different types of marketers out there. Yeah. And so what kind of marketing skill set should a dentist actually be looking for?
Well, try to separate in your mind the difference between a strategic marketing person, someone who really has broad experience and can help you measure new patients and determine in every business, like if you go through business school, there's one statistic that they want to tell you about in marketing, and that's your customer acquisition cost or your customer acquisition model. And what that means is how much do you have to spend to buy a new patient? And if you can figure out the method of doing that, like if you can spend $110 and you can buy a new patient and you know how to replicate that, now you've figured out what your customer acquisition cost is and your customer acquisition model. And it might be as simple as you've figured out a way to design your mailer, your print mailer, to drive a new patient. And for every these amount of dollars you spend, this is how many new patients it drives. Or you figured out how to spend money on a Facebook ad with a targeted search in your zip code, and you spend this amount of money and you get this number of patients. Or you figured out how to do one event every quarter at a local movie theater, and this is what it costs, and it buys you this many new patients. I mean, there's 30 different tactics, but your strategic kind of marketing person should have the experience to help you get to the point where you're actually measuring your cost of getting that new patient and determining what's the lowest amount of money you can spend to buy that patient. Or maybe not the lowest, but how much do you have to spend to get the best type of patient?
Right, the most efficient, most effective.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've got people with digital marketing experience and social and search advertising, print and events. But, I mean, I really think it's important in dentistry, digital marketing is becoming one of the most important areas of marketing. And I do think, though, events and print media still have a place, and it's important to just make sure you have someone focusing on that and that really has a good experience there, and you're not just winging it.
Okay. Another member of the board would be your estate planning expert or asset protection lawyer. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, there's a difference. There's a lot of different types of lawyers, but this type of lawyer really specializes in making sure that all of your assets are protected from creditors and lawsuits as best you can, right? And they can also help you and your financial advisor know when to assign ownership for different accounts and properties. So as you buy new assets or as you open new investment accounts, as your financial advisor makes recommendations on what to do, the asset protection or estate planning attorney should be involved to say, I recommend you own it this way, or you should own it this way. And that person should really have deep experience in protecting you against lawsuits from creditors and protecting your assets, as well as planning for your family in the case of, your premature death or death. So
premature
which
death.
I'm saying that's like a nice way of saying it.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
It always seems premature, I think, probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dude, if I live out there a ways, I won't feel like it's too premature. I mean, how old will you have to be?
I don't know.
You want to live to 105.
Probably. I still, as long as I can keep lifting weights in my hundreds. Okay. While we're on the subject of legal advisors, though, there is kind of a different type of legal advisor that can be helpful in different situations that a dentist might want to consider having on their board, which would be a litigation lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between an estate planning attorney and then someone who has a lot of experience in litigation, and this person can help protect you in the case of, a patient complaint or weird lawsuit there, embezzlement or other legal issues with staff. And so I think that's important to just distinguish. You probably won't have one lawyer, but if you had to have one, you'll have an estate planning attorney that then can help, bring in someone else as needed. But you should probably have someone on the speed dial.
Yeah,
for
the estate
both.
planning is probably the guy on the legal side that you'd interact with more frequently, hopefully, than the litigation expert, right?
Totally.
But, okay, and we did an entire show on that. Dentists are really exposed when it comes to litigation for a lot of different areas. We talked about that in detail in another episode. So it's obviously really important to have good representation there.
Yeah.
What about let's talk about real estate for a minute. What about a real estate expert?
Yeah, I think you need to have someone who you can really trust to be objective with you, and help you decide whether you should lease or purchase your practice space, whether you should relocate, give you a pulse on the local market. I mean, that person's super integral, and having the right person that you really can trust is it's difficult to replace that. I mean, there's the real estate industry has a pretty mixed bag of professionals. It's really important to find someone who specializes in working with dentists and somebody who you feel like can represent you and sometimes do consulting for you, even though they may not be wanting to relocate you, just help you make decisions and that kind of stuff. Okay,
let's talk about 2 or 3 more left that we'd like to discuss. Another essential member of the board would be a personal coach. And I know you've got experience in this in our business, and you've done that for years now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff, I think, is the more you kind of add up board members, people are just thinking, well, that's going to cost money, and this is going to cost money, and that's going to cost money. And the hard part is that, building a company, building a really solid, stable dental practice is going to cost money. It's not cheap, and there isn't there, unfortunately, there's no
breaking
way.
news.
Yeah. And a coach is one of those things where when you say that term, I think it kind of has mixed messages. When I look at that, I mean, and I feel like I've got probably one of the best like personal coaches for me. I spent a long time trying to find somebody. I don't spend a lot of money on it. I probably spend, $500 to $700 a month. And I have good calls, with that person. And the primary thing that I think that person does for me is when I feel a little bit overwhelmed or I feel like I may not have the best. I don't know how would you say it? How do I get like
overwhelm's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
There's
a lot going on.
Yeah.
So you don't have enough time for everything. Sometimes it's good to be able to articulate your personal goals to someone who's got some psychology experience, who they can kind of say, and I do prefer coaches who actually have some, like not just business consultants business consultants, a different board member. Okay. But a coach is somebody who really does have experience in psychology or psychiatry, and they can actually see the patterns over time of things you say, the things you repeat, the habits that you might have in your thought processes. And they'll help you kind of identify, hey, you did this like a couple months ago.
You always
remember?
say this, man. Yeah.
You always say this, and this is what you've been saying. And it doesn't have to be super expensive, but I do think that person can help you a lot of times if they're interacting with your other board members, and your other board members can get insight from that person into your personality. It just makes you be in a lot stronger situation. It's kind of like someone you can go to talk about your practice, stress management, and get some motivational insight, and it kind of keeps you on the right track. I don't know if it's essential for everybody, but I kind of consider myself a pretty independent person, and I've got a lot of drive and ambition, but I find that having someone I can bounce those things off of periodically really does help me avoid making strategic mistakes in my business that I might make otherwise.
Or just decisions that you feel pressure to make, or, I mean, I think that's kind of the pattern too. You feel stressed, you feel overwhelmed, and you feel kind of compelled to make quick decisions that might be,
based on some kind of emotional response,
some trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I speak for the office when I say we're grateful for your coach.
Yeah,
like you get too stressed out, you're like, just call the guy.
Just
go have a call. Okay, you seem always in a good mood when you're.
He's a good dude.
Okay, so what you mentioned consultants though, how do they fit into this board?
Well, think of a consultant separate from your coach. I mean, the coach might give you some consulting advice, but a consultant is someone that I view as someone more tactical. They're actually going to get involved in your practice at a deeper level and actually implement change. And so I think a good board shouldn't have one consultant on hand. I think you have to have several people ready to call at a moment's notice. I know we do in our business, and sometimes those people just fill gaps that are maybe gaps that your staff doesn't have in their skill set, maybe something your office manager doesn't have a lot of experience in. But you've got to pinpoint and really prioritize the target areas that you need, and learn and then you've got to learn how to identify the specific strengths of each consultant so that you can know who to call for specific issues. So are you struggling with, maybe it's an equipment purchasing decision, or an overhead management issue, or a new patient or growth issue, or you have a scheduling problem, or do you have an HR issue? Do you have a front desk and insurance issue? That every practice is going to have things that come up over the course of a year that really require specific advice, and you won't get it right out of the gate. I mean, if you haven't spent money on consulting, the first time you do it, it's probably going to feel like
trial and error.
Feel like a waste of money.
Okay,
but if you do it a few times in small increments, I don't recommend large expenses. I do like paying people for time as I go. I'd rather pay someone for a day and then feel like that day was a waste than spend money on 5 days and realize that the whole 5 days was a waste,
or 24 months,
or 24 months, or a year-long contract. I think good consultants prove their value along the way, and I prefer to see them earn it, and show their value on a regular, ongoing basis. I know that's how our business works. We don't ask for contracts, and we don't ask for being paid in advance, and so I want to see consultants that really can focus on specific areas and earn their value over time, and then you can learn to determine what areas in your practice you want to call on those specific people for.
Okay. And so let's just wrap this up with last, but for sure not the least of all, probably the person you interact with more than any of these other board members, I might think, is your need to have a good office manager. You might not consider that part of the board, right? Because that's a staff member. It's someone you have to pay on payroll anyway.
But I really think people need to really relook. If you're going to be an independent entrepreneurial dentist, I mean, that the office manager is probably the most important person on your advisory board, because a good office manager is going to alleviate a lot of the concerns that are causing you to seek help elsewhere. And I think if you have a competent office manager and you spend some time and money looking for someone, I think a lot of people feel like they can't find an experienced office manager, and I think that struggle comes because they're looking within the dental industry almost exclusively to try to find someone who has dental experience. And I know that that's an important quality for a lot of reasons, but if you bring in someone that's really sharp and someone who's paid well, that has experience running a business, they can reference things like ADOM or other forums and help resources to know how to learn the clinical and tactical side of dentistry. But you can't replace or you can't it's difficult to find competency if your search is limited so narrowly, especially in a city where you live. If you're in a more rural area or an area where you don't have a bunch of inventory of office managers to hire from,
sure,
it's easier in a bigger city. But smaller areas, I mean, you might need to look outside of the field to find someone that you just really trust and it's really sharp and really dependable and can have good conversations with people and act more like a manager. And I think generally people are just underpaying. Their expectations for what they need to pay for this role are probably too low. And if they just paid 20 or 25% more than what they expected to pay, it opens up a whole different hiring pool, and they can grow a lot bigger with that person. So I think it's really important.
Awesome. Okay, I think we made it. The last point we wanted to make before we close this out is that for the most part, the people on your board should know each other. They should probably trust each other and communicate regularly. The office manager, for example, will communicate with the marketing strategist and the consultants. The accountant should be in regular contact with the financial advisor, who also needs to work with the attorney and the real estate expert.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important if you're making a strategic decision, maybe one last point I'll make is that I wouldn't, if you've got more than one person telling you on your board that they don't like the decision you're making,
okay,
it's probably a sign that you might not be heading down the right direction. You've got to, I would say, any decision you make, find at least two people on your board that completely agree with you, and make sure that those two people that agree with you don't always have the same opinion, that they're just not buddies. I mean, make sure you can get multiple people to buy into your decisions. That's a good way to use your board.
Okay.
And if you're being really smart, you get the majority of your board to agree with you.
If you're doing it.
Yeah.
And so it's one of the first things that we try to do, though, is get this, when we get a new client, we want this open communication to be happening with all the different people, whether you call it your board or not. You do have these people in your life more often than not. So that's one of the first things we work on when we get a new client, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think it's, clients sign a contract, and then we respond by asking them for a list of all their professional contacts, because we know that we'll do a better job of advising when we know the other people who are helping them make decisions. And if you can leverage the power of a group of people, it really is a lot more efficient. You'll grow a lot faster than trying to do it on your own with only one member of your board being engaged. So
yeah, and it takes a lot of the burden off of the dentist's shoulders. So the dentist can just do good dentistry. Yeah,
and I just I feel like it's okay to pay for these things. It's important to be able to manage your expenses. I mean, I think what happens is dentists either pay way too much for it or they don't pay enough. It's kind of an extreme situation. You just need to pay the right amount to make sure you have the right board and the right key people in place. You can't leave a gap in your board. So choose people who know dentistry and are good at what they do, and it's going to pay huge dividends down the road.
Thanks, Reese. As they say in the biz, you are a wise old sage.
I don't know about that, Ryan, but it's good to be here, and good to hear you share some of that wisdom too, especially from the old D&D message board.
Well, I was gonna close this up with one more quote from the D&D message board.
I like it.
Okay, we'll probably never reference these ever again. These have been pretty decent though.
Well, let's see what they got to say today.
The final one says, "You need wisdom if you're a wizard. You need intelligence if you're a cleric.
Well done. Thank you, Ryan. That's very wise.
Thank you. And thanks to all our listeners for joining us. Remember, give us some feedback while you're on this episode, while it's fresh in your mind. Just go to the Listen tab at dentistadvisors.com. Just click on Listen at the top. You can use the comments section for this episode. We'd love to hear from you. And while you're on the website, you can also schedule a free consultation. You can call our phone number. And don't forget to like our Dentist Advisors Facebook page.
Carry on.